Hey, what's up guys, Tony here, and welcome to another episode of my V8 Supercar Mastery Series. This is week 4 at Road America, and this is the, as this title states, this is the practice problems that I'm having for the week. And this week's practice problems are two very interesting problems, and one of which I haven't mentioned before, and I never really thought it was going to be a problem, but it is. And the second one is sort of this conversation, this problem that I've been having for the most part throughout this entire adventure so far. So the first problem that I'm having, and I guess I should preface this right now, two things. One, like I mentioned before, the thing about the V8 Supercar for me that just baffles my mind is just how different you have to approach tracks. I mean, it's not, it's not like it's super different. It's not, 180 degrees different, but it's just a different approach. And for me, I have driven in this last year and a half now, I've driven a lot of GT3 cars. And so that's what I know. I know GT3 cars very well. And the problem that I'm having with this track is that I have spent an inordinate amount of time racing here at Road America with the roof and with the BMW, not so much the McLaren, but specifically the roof. Like, I spent hours upon hours upon hours working this track, getting my lap times down, getting my setup dialed in. I spent so much time on this track, and it's actually coming back to bite me in the ass. Now, I've mentioned this before in several videos about how you have to drive the V8 Supercar different. I hate to repeat myself so many times, but I'm finding that on this track, because the other 3 weeks, like Okoyama is a track that I never run. I mean, like I ran it in Mazda, in the MX Cup, but other than that, I think I've run it a couple other times, maybe once with a Cadillac or in the Kia, and I don't know, a couple other times, but it's not really a track that I have like ingrained, like the muscle memory. It's just kind of there. I know it, and it takes me probably about a half hour to sort of get used to the track again. And then Watkins Glen and Road Atlanta. Road Atlanta is another track that I really like. Like I've said, it's one of my favorite tracks, but it's also another track that, sporadically I'll run. GT3 runs it. I think I ran it maybe on a Corvette Cup. And so I don't I have time in, but I don't have a lot of time in. And then Watkins Glen is a track that I've raced a number of times in each of their different configuration. But anyways, the point is that those first 3 weeks, they're tracks that I have run before, but they're not tracks that I sort of obsessed over. There's a couple of tracks in iRacing that I have obsessed over to get good at. And one is Bathurst, one is Sebring, and the other one is Road America. Actually, the one track, Road America, of those 3 tracks, Road America is the track that I've spent the most time learning. So basically my problems are as follows. I am very cognizant of what I need to do to race consistently on this track with this car. The problem that I have is the longer that I'm running, the more I find myself falling back into GT3 habits. And that's really difficult because my fastest lap time from this practice session was a 2:10.1. And I really wanted to get a 2:09 really bad. And right now I'm going to give a shout out to my teammate and friend Tim. He gave me a setup that it's so solid. It's unbelievably solid. And he got it from this league he races in now on Tuesday nights. So shout out to Tim. Thank you. I don't know who he originally got it from, but thank you very much. Like you've changed my approach to this track, like how I'm performing on this track significantly, because my lap times were like low 212s, maybe a high 211, and I've taken over a second off of my lap time. So it's amazing. Like good setups, obviously good setups go a long way. Anyways, so that's my problem. That's one problem that I'm having, is that the longer I'm running, the more I find myself falling back into GT3 habits. It's this muscle memory, and I'm doing my best to break it, and I really have to be conscious of what I'm doing, but it's really hard, and I don't know why, because You know, for the other tracks, like I said, I think it's because of the fact that I don't run those tracks, and I didn't spend so much time practicing on those other tracks with the GT3 cars. So it's not, it wasn't that big of an issue. It's just like, okay, this is how it's working. But this track, it is an issue, and I find myself towards the end of this the laps you're watching is towards the end of the practice session where I essentially got to a point where the point of frustration came, and I was just like, okay, you know what? What I need to do is turn off the old brain and just drive, because I was clearly thinking about what I was doing too much and not just doing it. And when I did that, I was running in the mid 210s, which I'm happy with. I'll take that, you know, as you know, practice goes. This is probably my third practice session, so I would say probably close to 3 hours practicing this week so far, and so it's not a lot of time. But the thing is I think finally I'm starting to get over that hurdle. But it's one of those things that I just got to be aware of as I'm running. And I know for sure, this is usually what happens for me, is that it doesn't really matter how much I practice. I learn the most from actually racing. So after I get a race in, I'd like to race tonight. It's 10:30 right now as I'm recording this on Wednesday night. I'd love to get a race in at midnight. I've raced on Wednesday nights before with the Australians, so it'd be nice to get a race in to see where I stand, and also to just be able to follow people, get their lines down, and just get into a racing sort of habit. Because right now I find myself in a sort of a hot lap / practice habit, trying to get that 209, that elusive 209. That doesn't really matter if I get it or not, because usually in the race I'll be at least a half second slower than whatever, you know, hard charging I do in practice. So that's one of my problems. So the other problem I'm having, and I know it's closely associated with my GT3 track knowledge problem, is that I am having an issue with running off track and spinning out and crashing, and it has to do with the fact that I am on the right side of the car, and normally that doesn't bother me. It doesn't really bother me at all. It didn't bother me in the first couple of tracks, the first 3 weeks, but for whatever reason, well, I can't say for whatever reason, because I know exactly what it is. At least I'm speculating what it is. It's just that I practice, like I said, I practice so much with the roof. Like, I'm normally on the left-hand side of the car, so my brain gets in. I know the corner exits, I know the corner entries, and sometimes I've noticed that I just assume, just visually, it's just like the left side of the car doesn't exist, and so I run off track. So that's also something that I'm gonna have to be really conscious about, is making sure that I'm not putting the car too far off track, or, you know, like staying within the lines, basically. And it's really weird. It was really weird this week, because it's just not something that I ever have to think about, and then I'm finding myself having to think about it. So anyways, those are the problems I'm having this week. It's basically all this GT3 practice that I have put in. It's all this muscle memory. And it was kind of interesting, because the first night that I was practicing with this guy Ryan, and he told me, actually saw one of his videos, he said that he was running the top split last season with the V8 Supercar America series, and so the guy's very knowledgeable, and he gave me some good tips. And when he gave me the good tips, I was very much in a state of frustration, so I definitely wasn't as appreciative as I should have been. So Ryan, if you're listening, I'm sorry about that. I just was really frustrated with my performance while I was practicing. Anyways, going back on to what I was saying, is what's interesting is that Ryan, he said that his problem is whenever he goes to run in a series besides V8 supercars, like GT3 for instance, he's the opposite, where he's running slow because he's so used to braking early for corners and just so used to driving the V8 supercar that he's not fast when he drives GT3 coming from the V8 supercars, where I told him I'm so the opposite, and it was coming out of me on this track. And I was telling him that I'm so used to braking so late that it's not, I'm having a hard time adjusting on this track with the V8 supercars. And what I do find is that if I were to go jump into a GT3 race, like after practicing with the V8 supercars, my lap times are faster immediately after driving the V8 supercar than if I were just to go into a practice session cold, just because I know what it's like to be behind the wheel of a car that's not the most nimble and is not the easiest car in night racing to drive. So when I go to a GT3 car that is by far, relatively speaking, a lot easier of a car to drive, I can handle it so much better than if I were just going cold. It's really strange. But it's interesting, like I was saying, it's interesting to see somebody like Ryan note the difference. He basically sees the same thing just in reverse. So anyways, basically this week, for the, tomorrow is the first race of the America Series, and then Friday, of course, is a big race. And I hope to get a race in on Sunday if I don't get a race in tonight. So those are the things I'm going to be working on. They're more mental than anything else, and so it's a different sort of approach to racing this week. So anyways, I'm going to cut myself off here before I ramble too much. So anyways, as always, I really appreciate your comments, and I really appreciate your feedback. So if you do leave feedback, I will do my best to get back to you ASAP. And like I said, I always appreciate the feedback and the tips and advice. So thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing, and I shall talk to you guys later.